We are live, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the El Cajon City Council meeting. We continue holding remote meetings while the governor's executive order continues to be in effect due to COVID-19. We'd like to remind our citizens they can submit questions for items on today's agenda. Public comments may also be submitted at this time, and they will be read at the appropriate time during this meeting. Comments will be accepted up to the conclusion of the vote of each item. Comments can be submitted through the City of El Cajon's website, www.cityofelcajon.us. That's cityofelcajon.us. Look under Agendas and Minutes, go to the video streaming, you'll see a button to submit your comments. So again, I encourage people to submit their comments now so they'll be ready when we get there. This meeting is now called to order, and I'd like to ask our city clerk to call the roll.
Thank you, sir. Gentlemen, when I call on your name, would you please state that you are present? Mayor Wells?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Ortiz?
I'm here.
Council Member Goebel?
Here.
Council Member Kendrick?
Here.
And Council Member McClellan is absent from today's meeting.
All right. Would you all say the Pledge of Allegiance with me and then keep silent for a moment of silence? Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance
To the
flag of the United States
of America,
and to the
to the
republic
republic
for
for
which
which
it
it stands,
one nation,
one nation,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty and justice
for all.
Thank you very much. The city clerk posted orders of adjournment of the July 14th, 2020 meeting and the agenda of the July 28th, 2020 meeting in accordance with state law, council, and housing authority policy. I would like to once again remind the public to submit their comments early and make sure that they are received on time. And these comments can be read at the time the item is approved. We have no presentations today on today's agenda. Staff, do you have any agenda changes?
Mr. Mayor, we have no changes to the agenda.
Council, any agenda changes? All right. That brings us to consent items. Consent items are routine matters enacted by one motion according to the recommendation listed below. With the concurrence of the City Council, a council member or person in attendance may request discussion of a consent item at this time. Council members, do you wish to pull any consent items?
Nope.
Staff, do you wish to pull any consent items?
No, sir.
Angela, do you have any comments for consent?
We received no comments for consent items, sir.
I'd like to make a motion then to approve the consent items.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Mayor Wells, your vote, please.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ortiz?
Yes.
Council Member Goebel?
Yes.
Council Member Kendrick?
Yes.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
Thanks, Angela.
Thank you.
All right, we are quickly moving through the agenda. We are now at public comment. At this time, any person may address a matter within the jurisdiction of the City Council, Housing Authority, Successor Agency, to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency, not on the agenda. Comments relating to items on today's agenda are to be taken at the time the item is heard. State law prohibits discussion or action on items not on the agenda. However, City Council and Housing Authority members may briefly respond to statements or questions, and an item may be placed on a future agenda. Angela, did we receive any comments for public comment? Angela, can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Sorry about that, sir. We have a comment for item 4.
I think we'll do that when we get there.
But we don't have public comments, sorry.
All right. If somebody does end up sending in a public comment, we will open it up again for public comments. I want to make sure in this strange format that everybody has the opportunity to be heard if they want to be. So if you have a public comment, go ahead and submit it now. There are no written communications. We have no public hearings on today's agenda. We have 3 administrative reports on today's agenda. Item 4 is for the Hillside Park Pilot Parklet Plan. I'll ask staff to introduce this item. That's a pretty good alliteration there. The Pilot Parklet. The Park Pilot Parklet.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor.
Frank, it's all yours.
Frank Carson, Director of Parks and Recreation, thank you very much for allowing me to present this today. We are calling it a pilot park project for a couple of reasons, and I hope to delineate that to you this afternoon. So Hillside Park, it is one of our largest parks in our city. It has a lot of open space areas, and we do want to capitalize on that for a number of reasons. We don't have a lot of nature areas for our citizens, so we want to more educate our community on nature, getting in touch with nature, but also expand active recreation opportunities in the park. This pilot parklet, and the pilot parklet is that we still want to get community input, and we also want to get volunteer support to actually build it. So that's why it's more or less called a pilot parklet. We're trying something a little bit different in our capacity building in terms of park design, and it's something similar to what we've done with our 4 Cajon playgrounds that we've had in the city, as well as our 2 First 5 Commission playground grants that were met. So this pilot parklet is what we are suggesting, given recent feedback from our El Cajon Plan 2030, is that we have an unfenced off-leash dog park area, and I'll show where this would be on a map. It's not a topographic map, but I'll explain it to you in just a little bit. We also did get a lot of feedback that people want a specific mountain biking or BMX course area, a pump track type of item. So we are looking at this as an option, as well as some more nature exploration areas. Lastly, I'll add in some stuff about a playground area grant that we were awarded, and we're also waiting for some matching fund grant funding for it. And I'll walk you through some of that matching fund grant funding that we have also. So this is something I do want to thank our GIS division, Tim Williams and Greg Smith, for helping create this with us. They actually went out to the site with us several times. We've walked the site with many different members, fire, police, as well as public works, just to get everybody's input. We've also done one-on-one qualitative interviews with community members that actually use this park site and use a lot of this trail system. So in the large yellow areas where we're suggesting it would be an off-leash dog park, and so even an unfenced. What we would do is work with volunteers one day to put in wood posts and put in a rope, so it's a designated area, so people know, okay, this specific area with the rope is for off-leash dogs, but it's not going to really keep dogs from, but it's not like a fence type of thing. So dogs will be able to roam free. Many cities are doing this. You see this in Balboa Park, as well as in Dog Beach area, where it's unfenced. Downtown El Cajon in their Memorial Park, they have this. So we're going to explore this opportunity here at this location to add to a second location where we do have a dog, off-leash dog interest and opportunity for our community. The larger blue area that you see on the map here is where we have already cleared some non-native debris, and we've done that with the yellow area as well. We had invasive species throughout that area, so we were able to clear out a lot of the non-native out of the area, but still keep plants within that area. But we recognize that we can utilize this with existing resources to create a BMX pump tracks potentially. And then you see a new trail system that we would work with our fire department. Potentially, we've had conversations with our fire chief, but there's other opportunities too to potentially help create a trail system. That's that really long area that you see, the trail system that even has the switchbacks. That's what we would hope to more formalize a trail system right there. The pink areas would be our nature play areas. And this is a critical component. I'll go over that in just a second. But throughout this park, we would have engaging pieces, signage, and there's a lot of grant funding we can compete once we have a basic plan like this in place. So it's not like a pie in the sky idea. If we have a plan in place, then there's more grant funding that we can compete for or actually have allocated to us already. And I'll go over that as well. So our Prop 68 funding, we were just notified last week after I submitted this agenda item of a meeting. So we actually had a meeting on Friday, July 24th from 2 to 5 p.m. with the state, along with about 50 other agencies. They're doing 50 agencies per. And this is part of that funding. So if you remember, the voters voted this in June of 2018. And part of that is there's going to be competitive funding. This is the non-competitive funding. So this is money that we are guaranteed right here from that. So every agency will be getting $177,952. Every agency. Now, in addition to that, our city has been allocated an additional $64,384.37. The reason why I want to make sure I bring that up is that we'll actually have to, when we submit reports and do all the legwork for it, we actually have to do two separate forms for those two different fundings. Even though they're both non-competitive, we're both awarded that grant. Now, being that Hillside is not in a severely disadvantaged area, we would have to provide a 20% match. And most of our areas are not in these categories. But this match can be done through our volunteers that we would use for our off-leash dog area to help us design that and build that. Same with our BMX course. Earlier this year, that same effort made by our city staff, at least in informal talks with the state on Friday, they would count that. So any efforts made after June 2018 will count. So we had a biologist out there, which we're required to do any kind of open space clearing. We also had city crews out there doing that clearing. So all of that, like city crews, the biologists, and volunteer efforts, that's all included in the match that we can actually apply to this. So it works in our benefit. Beyond that, I want to more explain the nature exploration area. So in Balboa Park, this is one example, and this is actually a colleague of mine shared their photo of their nature exploration area in Morley Field. And this is what you would consider it a nature playground. You can use wood stumps, we can use large palm fronds. There's a lot of objects that we can use. We can put in large boulders or move boulders to specific areas. So instead of having a rock climbing wall, we can have a boulder where kids can explore on. This has been a movement in the parks and recreation industry for about 10 years. And the terminology is that we're trying to prevent nature deficit disorder. So connecting our community to nature. Last year, we did compete and we were awarded a training grant where we sent staff not only to Washington, D.C., but other parts of the country through the National League of Cities and the Children in Nature Network to learn how to facilitate this. So if you remember from the last council meeting, I introduced you to Mr. Malo. He goes by Malo Lutu. He's actually taken the lead. He's one of our experts that has been trained by the National League of Cities to introduce these nature areas. And that's really what we're going to be targeting doing at Hillside Park. Malo has created relationships within the community. He's already identified items that will be donated, like these smoothed out logs, of what you see here. So these are items that we would hope to introduce. Part of the Prop 68 non-competitive funding is that I first have to pass a resolution. Before I did that, I at least wanted to introduce you to the direction that we're going with it. So either the first meeting in August or the first meeting in September, you'll see a resolution come your way toward this. We're not planning on using any general fund money for this effort. It would all be grant funded. So when I say grant funded, we were awarded last fall a Playcore grant. And Playcore is a playground manufacturer. And the way how we wrote that grant this is what you see right here is the footprint for a playground at Hillside Park. Hillside Park is the last park that has a recreation center that does not have a playground. And you heard that right. That park's been there for almost 50 years, and it does not have a playground, and it's the last rec center without one. So our effort has been the last 2 years of targeting that site for a grant. We're shovel-ready grant for Kaboom, but we were awarded this grant through Playcore. So if you remember, within the last couple of years, we added this footprint. This was a CIP project. This was a $40,000 CIP project where we put this footprint in for playground. To make us competitive funding for a playground, we needed to have this footprint in place. So you'll see you have the ADA ramp there. These are all parts to what we would need to actually get the grant. So this is a 100% match grant. So if we would spend $50,000 match from the Prop 68 funding, then they would match that. If we spend $100,000 from Prop 68 grant for this playground and the adult fitness course, if we choose that option, then they would match that. And we would more have to pay for the construction or the installation of it, which shouldn't be too bad. It's usually more or less the objects that we would get or the amenities that we would get. But this community is definitely very hungry. I'm asked often, when are we getting the playground here, especially after we got the footprint in place. So even though we're shovel ready and we have grants other places, this one's a guarantee. So we're going to be going in this direction if you do approve this basic plan in place right now. And I'll take any questions that you may have. I know that we do have a public comment, so I'll let Angela also address that.
All right, council, any questions for Frank? Well, Frank, I had one question for you. So it sounded to me like you were saying that for that 20% matching, we could use volunteer hours. And how do they quantify that in terms of money?
So I off the top of my head, I want to say it's $26 and like 12 cents an hour per volunteer that we would use. And so I'd have to have a sign-out sheet. There's some protocols with that, but I believe that's the prevailing wage number that they would want me to calibrate it at.
Interesting. Okay. I had no idea we could do that. That's great. Anybody else have a question for Frank before we move on to public comment? Okay, Frank, thanks. Nice presentation. Angela, what's our comment?
And this comment is from Stephanie Harper. And she writes, this item is somewhat of a shock to me. Even though this report shows no financial impact now to the city, sometime down the road it will. I think it is just awful of the city to want to redesign Hillside Park before they get the redesigns done to Wells Park that they promised 5 years ago to do. The city budgeted over $1 million over 2 different year budgets. I asked why the work promised had never been done. I was told the money was budgeted, just never allocated. What does that mean? ? I must have missed the council meeting where that was on agenda. I think it shows extreme favoritism towards some projects than others. You're being like that friend who owes you money and says they're broke, but who you see later at the casino. Take care of what you promised to who you promised first. Don't be shysty to the citizens that live closer to Wells Park. They have been waiting 5 years. End of comment, and no other comments for this item.
Okay.
Mayor, if I could just give you a quick snapshot of what's been done at Wells Park
Sure.
real quick. So in 2014, 2015, we added in the Indian Gaming Local Benefit Committee, revitalization of the adult fitness center there. We also had the community design and built Kaboom Playground. Mayor, you were there at the ribbon cutting. I believe you remember that. Beyond that, we were awarded a housing-related parks program grant in 2016, and we added a dog agility course. We added lighting for the playground as well as dog agility course, increased safety fencing around those areas, added shade structures at two shade structures at two different actually 3 shade structures at the dog park. So we've done a lot to that 2016 point. I believe Ms. Parker may be referring to the May 2017 Wells Park Master Plan, where all the aspects of Phase 1 and Phase 2 have been complete except for one item. So we've done everything. We've added the park ranger substation right there. We've added the rec squad. We've added safety perimeter fencing. We've added lights to the parking lot, as well as many other features. We've done the sewer line. The only item that we're still waiting on doing, and we were waiting for the sewer line, is the bathroom redesign. And then Phase 3 is what we are looking at doing is we are in final negotiations with U.S. Soccer Foundation in terms of bringing them in to do a hardscape court, as well as we would be adding in through CDBG artificial turf soccer courts through our own surveys of residents that utilize Wells Park. We have over 400 surveys just through them for those efforts. So we made considerable amount of effort. I believe specifically Ms. Harper might be referring to what she had seen several years ago in terms of like 5 years ago, we may have outlined in a CIP 5-year plan that we were looking at doing all the playgrounds in a non-wood type of surface, so like a rubberized surface type of thing. That money was never allocated. That was a 5-year plan, and we do an annual budget. And so that's why it was never allocated. We do an annual budget, and it was within 5 years. It was taken off as a potential, specifically because Wells Park Playground is 6,000 square feet. It's really not a good investment for that money. We're talking close to $200,000 to put a playground surface on 6,000 square feet. It's not a good investment of money. We can put that money into a lot of different areas. We can put in 4 pickleball courts for $200,000 where we get a greater impact for that. It's wiser for us to continue using that still new playground at Wells Park with the fiber, engineered wood fiber that's in place there now. I'll stop now.
So Frank, so the implication was that money was going to be diverted from finishing Wells Park to change course midstream and do this new park, and I don't think that's the case. I think they're separate entities.
Yes, we've spent since 2014. We spent over $1 million on Wells Park in different efforts.
But the money we're getting for the Hillside Park is grant money.
Right. So you would still have to approve that through the resolution that would come within the next 2 council meetings, as well as any future contracts the state would send our way. We're just in the beginning phase of it. In order for me to start that grant application, I have to at least get initial approval from the council here.
I appreciate you clarifying that.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
When was the last time Hillsdale Park received significant improvements to the level that we're talking about right now?
So the Recreation Center through Prop H funding in 2014 was renovated. The reason why we identified Hillside Park Rec Center to be renovated is that the actual building was separating in place. It was a less than $1 million renovation, and the reason why we identified that rec center out of all the ones that needed to be renovated at the time was because the building was literally going to fall apart within 3 years. We were told by our engineers at the time. So we had to do something. So they did a large cost was putting a 8-foot deep French drain. So, hillside, people inside would always joke hillslide, but now they have that French drain to avoid any type of building separation and other problems. But the actual park itself, there's been only that $40,000 invested in that playground footprint.
Only $40,000 for the last how many years?
At least 10 years, sir.
Oh, wow. Okay. So long overdue to do some improvements to the actual landscape of the park.
Right. And I haven't been promising the community that live right there, but I've been telling them that I'm making every effort to put a playground in there. And so this is just my effort in that regard.
Thanks, Frank.
Hey, any other questions or comments from council? Well, we don't need to close the public hearing, so I'm open to a motion or more discussion.
I'll move to approve the City Council adopts the Hillsdale Park Pilot Parklet Plan.
I'll second that.
Mayor Wiltz, your vote, please.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ortiz,
Yes.
Councilmember Goebel,
Yes.
Councilmember Kendrick.
Yes.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
Thank you. The next administrative report, item number 5, is for an amended early lease termination agreement with Crisis House. Staff, would you tell us about this, please? Graham?
I think think he's frozen or muted.
Graham, are you with us?
Yeah, he's with it.
We got a technical problem. Okay.
Okay, I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm doing something I've never done before, so a screen share. So let me get that shared. I'm struggling to do that. So
we can see it. We can see it. It's just you have to go to presenter mode now.
Oh, you can actually see it now? I'm right. Sorry. Okay. Okay, as you recall, the city of El Cajon owns some property on Magnolia Avenue. This is a property that we currently lease to Crisis House. We have been leasing the property for the last, I think, 15 years at $1 a year. We also, as you can see in the photo that's displayed on the screen, there's a Verizon cell tower, and we actually share about 75% of the revenue of the proceeds from that cell tower. And last year was about $18,500 in revenue that we shared with Crisis House for that. Several months ago, after realizing that the lease expires at the end of next fiscal year, to be specific, July 31st, 2021, we started analyzing are there better higher uses for that property. And based on some conversations with the staff and council, we recognize there's probably a value to not renew the lease with Crisis House. And because of that, we provided formal notice to Crisis House on April 7th, 2020. I had actually been in verbal conversations with Mary Case, the executive director for Crisis House, for several months prior to that, but we gave formal notice on April 27th. As you recall, the city purchased this property with community development block grant funds and specifically capital funds. And so those capital funds do limit what we can spend any proceeds from the sale of that property. They have to be spent on CDBG eligible capital projects. So we can't use it for programs. So we can't use it for example, to run a homeless shelter. We can't use it to run a recreation program, but we can use it to build things. So we can use it to purchase a property for an organization like Crisis House. We can use it for park improvements in eligible neighborhoods. For example, pickleball courts at Wells Park, or a skate spot somewhere in the downtown of the city or at Wells Park. So there's a lot of opportunities to use the proceeds of that money. And what we're recommending as staff, or we recommended at your council meeting 2 weeks ago on the 23rd, is we enter into an early termination agreement. I think our concern is that if we were to just gift money to Crisis House, that could be perceived as a gift of public funds. And so we needed to get something out of that. And so by Crisis House leaving early, it would enable the city to put that property onto the market as soon as possible. And then as a benefit to Crisis House, it provides them a financial incentive to purchase a piece of property so they could vacate the current property they're leasing. Otherwise, they can, by our lease agreement, stay at the property for the duration of the term, which is, again, July 31st, 2021. The agreement that the council approved on June 23rd said that if Crisis House were to enter into escrow or vacate by September 31st, the city would grant them $700,000 into an escrow account to help with the purchase of a piece of property. That same incentive or a similar incentive was offered for vacating by December 31st in the amount of $350,000, and by March 31st, 2021, $150,000. So those agreements, or that agreement, was approved by the city council. Since that time, neither the city or Crisis House officers have signed the agreement. So it's an agreement that's still hanging out there, approved, but yet to be executed. Crisis House has asked for several modifications to the current agreement, and so I'll just walk through what those requests are. One is to enter for the city to provide the incentive payment of $700,000 if Crisis House were to enter into escrow by December 31st, close escrow and that should be 2020, close escrow by January 31st, and then after 2 weeks have a 2-week move out period. And so they would actually vacate the site by February 14th. So the $700,000 would require those 3 dates to be met. They also asked the city if we would consider giving them also an incentive to relocate by March 31st of $350,000. So those are sort of the 2 really big requests that were made by Crisis House. Based on that request, staff has prepared a modified early termination agreement for the city council to consider. That modification does include many of the requests made by Crisis House. It does include the $700,000 for meeting that December 31st, January 31st, and February 14th deadlines. I did take out any incentive pay to relocate by March 31st. I felt that this was sufficient time, and also that at some point there's really not a lot of benefit to the city financially for them to relocate only a few months prior to the termination of the agreement anyway. We did include some language in the agreement that allows the city and Crisis House to work with a third party if there's a third party opportunity. And the first agreement did not contemplate that, but this does give us some leeway to work with a third party that may want to help Crisis House purchase the property, the relocation property, and we could work directly with them. If the council was not comfortable with that resolution and that agreement, you could always modify staff's proposal. Remember, you can move those dates back. So you could maybe set the deadline just everything vacated by January 31st, or you could set the date to December 31st, which was sort of the original date in the original agreement. So that could be another option that the city council could consider. The other option is you do nothing and the existing agreement stays in place. And if parties don't sign, then the agreement never is executed. But those are sort of some of the options that the city council may want to consider this afternoon after hearing public comment. Also, I think it's important to recognize that Crisis House still is entitled to remain at the facility for the full term of the lease agreement through July 31st. During that period of time, they'll be paying the $1 per year, and they'll continue to receive revenue from the cell site. So that still is another option that they may choose, even if they enter into this agreement. They may recognize that there's actually more financial incentive for them to do that than to relocate into a purchased property, and maybe leasing a property is more acceptable financially to them. So that concludes staff's report. I'm able to answer any questions that you may have. We've also been able to link in through our Zoom conference several guests from Crisis House that can answer some specific questions that you may have of them. I think they would like to make some comments as well. So on the line and available for questions are Mary Case, Crisis House Executive Director, Robbie Cornell, real estate broker that's currently working with Crisis House, and then Josh Hill, a board member for Crisis House, and I believe he's currently the treasurer for Crisis House at this time. So with that, Council, we're able to answer any questions that you may have.
All right. Council, do you have any questions of staff, or do we want to hear from the Crisis House folks first?
I've got 2 questions for staff. The first question is, are we sure, or are the taxpayers sure that if we offer $700,000 that the value of the land that we would get is worth at least $700,000?
I can't go in 100% confidence because you never know what the market will do. But we did have the property appraised last spring, and I tested that with the current broker that we have on record that's going to help represent the property, and he feels confident that we can achieve that. However, Mr. Goebel, you're exactly right. We may find the best use for the property could yield actually less than $700,000, and then the city would be on the hook to come up with that difference. And we don't have CDBG capital funds available, so that would be a general fund expenditure.
Is there any sense whether this kind of property is in demand?
According to the broker, we think there is some demand for that property.
Okay. That's all I got for staff.
All right, anybody else? Okay, let's go ahead and speak to the folks from Christ House. Mary, would you like to start? Can she hear me?
Sure. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Wells and council members. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and staff. Again, I'm Mary Case, Executive Director of Crisis House. And I'm a homeowner in El Cajon for the past 17 years. Thank you very much for reconsidering our early lease termination agreement, for the opportunity to have a dialogue with you. I want to start by telling you that we've taken significant action to prepare to leave the premises at 1034 North Magnolia, our home for the past 26 years. For instance, packing efforts are well underway, as Graham can attest to at his last visit to the building. Harold Brown from East County Transitional Living Center and his crew are going to help us move. The El Cajon Valley Kiwanis are renting trucks to move us. And we stopped taking new clients for our mail services for the homeless, which is a much needed service. And we stopped that on the 15th of June, and it will terminate on August 14th. It takes quite a while to make this happen. They can't just put in a change of address. So that's our address that we're loaning to them. This should lessen traffic to the building and help address some of your concerns about the new hotel across the street. I've also been advertising our property need and search for off-market properties with EDC, the Chamber, our social media outlets, and so forth. I want to introduce Robbie and Josh. Robbie is, as Graham said, he's our broker, and Josh works for California Bank and Trust as a commercial banker there in VP. These two men are experts in their field in East County, and they are here today to share with you our efforts to find the property, information about the market, trends, and lending. Robbie, I'm going to come back after them, but Robbie, will you please begin? And I just want to let you know that Josh is going to sort of chime in, and then when they're done, you can ask them questions, and then I'd like to wrap up.
How you guys doing? My name is Robbie Cornell. I've been a commercial real estate broker out here for the last 13 years. Started my own company about a year and a half ago, and had a lot of properties in the East County market. Up until the COVID thing hit, our market was running probably about 1% vacancy rate. You could probably look at different avenues of, vacancy rates and, question it. But in the East County marketplace in itself is really tight. And so up until the COVID hit and things slowed down, which they've slowed down significantly, we still haven't seen that many vacancies. It's very rare that things come up for sale. And when they do come up for sale, it's a pretty competitive market. We've recently had a property that the Crisis House took a run at, and it was listed at $1,250,000, not even knowing that what they were capable of paying. It ended up selling for $1,350,000, and then the buyer took on the $100,000 solar, basically obligation that was put into the property. So quote unquote, it ended up going for a few $100,000 higher than asking. So even though the office market is changing a lot right now, one of the other things we're experiencing right now is it's almost like things have come to a screeching halt in the office market because current owners of office buildings aren't ready to let them go, even though their tenants aren't paying rent. By the end of this month, we'll see what really happens because the PPP loans were only in place for a period of a few months. And by the end of this month is when that's supposedly supposed to run out. So we'll see the residual effect of everything that's happened. But the East County marketplace in itself it's always been very competitive. I mean, there's not a lot of buildings that sell per year out here. And when they do, they're either off market or, they get swooped up quickly. I was just going through, we looked at about between 11 and 15 buildings total. Half those buildings didn't have enough space in them. The other half were formal medical facilities, so they need significant TIs. We've identified 2 smaller ones that kind of have a retail, kind of a quasi-retail use to them. But upon getting inside of them, we realized that they're completely torn to the studs and they'll need to be put back. So, with that said, we're going to see some challenges trying to get them into a building, just due to the competitiveness of the market. I mean, there's still a lot of people sitting on the sidelines, with cash. And so, most owners selling buildings would rather go with somebody that has, cash that doesn't have to get a loan. With that said, we're definitely trying hard to, find some. We've looked in Lakeside, Santee, El Cajon, Spring Valley, and down to Lemon Grove, and finding that turnkey property out there is it's a lot more difficult than you would think. It's almost like the housing market right now. The housing market's on fire because rates are so low. So I don't think we're going to see the residual effect of what happened with COVID for another 6 to 12 months at this point, because people still have money in the bank, and they're going to spend it to hold on to their assets if they can. It's a lot cheaper to hold your buildings than try to go out and buy a new one, because the investment side of the market has been way down as well. I mean, buy an investment deal right now, you're going to get any between 4 to 5% return on your money, and a lot of people are better off holding on to their properties. So we haven't seen that happen. The people that are selling and are moving right now, they have to move. It's because they have to, because a family member wants to sell a building and they've had to move into a new location, or, it's from what we're experiencing, it's cut down half the tenants out there. A lot of people are just kind of hanging tight and holding still. So, Josh, I don't know if you want to add in about the lending side of things.
Yeah, so hello everyone. My name is Josh Hill. I'm a board member of Crisis House. I work for a company of Bank and Trust in El Cajon. But yeah, just to kind of piggyback on what Robbie was just saying, the market, it's challenging right now for the price point that we are looking in. And given the timeline that we have to close our property to get the proceeds, that means they would have to find something within the next 60 days or so to get an escrow. And then the bank would have to close in roughly 60 days, which I can tell you from a lending perspective right now, we're not really quoting 60-day closes. We're closer to 75 to 90 days, just given the environment with the PPP loans. We have a lot of people working from home, which certainly kind of slows down capacity a little bit. As we all know, kids won't be going back to school in August. They'll be doing remote. So it's just a bit of a challenge from the banking side to close within a 60-day window, and it's frankly highly unlikely we could do so. You're probably closer to 90 days in reality. So what they've been working on, as you know, they looked at a property a couple of months ago. They were outbid on it, and they're constantly looking for new properties. They want to use this money, but it's pivotal that they find something within 60 days, which is going to be a challenge. We, from the banking side, I don't think are really going to realize the fallout of the PPP and the COVID mess until probably middle of next year. That's when properties are going to start to pop up, go on sale. You may see some discounting going on. But it is a challenge right now to meet the timeline that we have in December to get them closed on a property, just to find a property, and also from the banking side to get them wrapped up. But I think that's the biggest challenge.
Yeah. Also to add too, so I just closed a deal in the unincorporated part of El Cajon. And we did it with an SBA loan where, bank financing, and we put contingencies in there to give it extra time. One of the issues that the bank's been having is that bank attorneys are so tied up with the PPP loans and the ELID loans that when you're getting in the queue to get, your loan documents reviewed, they give you 2 options. They say, look, you can wait a full 30 days. Typically it's 2 weeks, but a full 30 days and we'll review it. Or you can pay an extra $5,000 to an outside attorney. We'll turn it over to them, and then we'll let you guys go ahead and, basically pay to speed it up. But we're finding that most buyers can't do that or don't want to do it. And so we've just put extra extension times into all our all our escrow situations. It's a lot harder to get phase ones done. Appraisals are slowed down, and then even appraisers right now are a little bit worried, that they don't want to make a mistake on their stuff, so they're taking longer. So it's been very it's been very interesting. I mean, the whole commercial real estate environment is changing completely, just like all our world is changing. Some more background on myself. I actually met Mary from I work with Hammond Construction. I work with the McGrath family and also the Cameron family, in which they own a majority of their stuff in Santee, but they own stuff all over. So we're talking to as many owners as we can directly about their specific need to see if we can come up with something. The biggest thing for us is, price wise, the price is what it is. But if we can get enough time from an owner by not putting a building on the market and saying, hey, work with us, that's where we're trying to pull our strings to move things forward. I don't know if you guys have any questions for us. I
do.
Okay.
We talked about a lot of different numbers as far as days go. What's a realistic time? What month?
So a realistic time to be into escrow or to close a deal?
To be out, to be finished.
Yeah, well, to be dead honest with you, Josh and I off the record were talking, and we were thinking, June of next year, which sounds crazy compared to what you guys have already talked about. But I mean, typical escrows, you got 30 days due diligence. You get into a deal, you got 30 days free look to look at it. Financing, from a financing standpoint, for somebody who's extremely qualified, before COVID, you're at like 65 to 75 days to get your loan in place. Now we're going 75 to 90, like Josh said. And part of that is, you get 60 days in, and sometimes the banks are like, well, you know what? We need more information out of you. And then so we got to provide a lot more stuff than we did before. So in a perfect world, you're 90 days, 30 for your physical contingency. You're another 90 for your financing, and then 30 days to close after that. So you're like 180 days total on the process. In a perfect world, everybody likes to shorten that up if they can, but No,
I appreciate that, and I understand the challenges you have, which are significant. The problem for us is that the $700,000 is an incentive.
Mm-hmm.
And
mm-hmm.
now we're talking about shaving off 1 month,
right,
of the time frame. So it's the council has to discuss it, but I think that's problematic.
Sure. I mean, our goal is to find something as soon as possible, and Mary and I have been talking almost on a daily basis. And the other issue we have too is if, you take one of the options that's out there right now. For example, there's this little property on Broadway. It's 3,400 feet. It's about, a couple thousand feet less than what she's in right now. She's just going to squeeze into it. It's built out into 11 private rooms that was for a doctor's office. So it's got, sinks in every room and whatnot. So could you find something to buy something? Sure. But could you move right into it? Probably not. And those are the other significant challenges you come up against. Like I said, the one turnkey property on El Cajon Boulevard ended up selling for a couple $100,000 over asking. And, that's just kind of the way of the world right now. So finding something affordable I always like to tell people that, the California San Diego real estate market is pretty challenging.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a matter of them, looking for a property and eventually finding one. It's just a matter of doing it within a certain window and a time frame. But I understand you guys want them to get the property to do what you want to do with it. So is there any way with them vacating the property early to still give you guys the incentive that you're looking for to just extend the time that they can access the money? Because certainly the market it'll only bear what it'll bear. And when they find something that they can compete on, they certainly will. But you want to make sure that they can find a property that's appropriate for them and what they do. Finding a property that needs significant TI improvements may not be the best thing for them. They don't want to disrupt operations for too long. But certainly I know they want to accommodate you with getting out of the space early for the incentive money. But at the same time, they're looking for something in return to get a little more leeway to access that $700,000.
Okay. So, Mary, do you have a concept of what the ask is?
So, one of the concerns, probably I'd call a major concern in the new agreement, is the inclusion of Roman numeral number 4 under Section 1, Lease Termination A, the new agreement. I believe, I have not had this reviewed yet by an attorney, but I believe it's saying that we can only receive the incentive payment for leaving early if we purchase before December 30th and close escrow by January 31st. One clarification is the closing of January 31st was not a request of ours. When I asked for the moving it back to December, I was kind of expecting the same language to enter, to purchase by December 30th, enter into escrow. And that language changed. So I just wanted to mention that. If, the thought is that if the city is still, if the intention is still to help Crisis House with our relocation by providing an incentive payment to leave early, then we think we should be able to realize the full $700,000 in the incentive payment to make a purchase at a future time by vacating the property as agreed to by December 31st. I want you to know that we're really motivated to purchase a building. The last thing we want to do is vacate and rent with our funds and then move our operations twice. We're prepared to do that in order to receive the incentive payment toward a future purchase because we don't have that money to for a down payment. This is not expected. So our interest is to retain the spirit of the agreement and eliminate that language from Roman numeral number 4 and add language back to Roman numeral 1 that allows us to use the incentive payment toward a future purchase in exchange for leaving by December 30th. We really do appreciate the extension of time from September 30th in the last agreement to December 31st in this one, which we requested and to gain time for our property search. But in reality, we really only gain about a month because the new deadline of closing escrow kind of changed that. So to be closed by 31st, we would need to enter escrow by November 1st, based on what you've heard, the 90-day, to safely close escrow by January 31st. Considering the holidays, unforeseen issues, that's what I'm thinking we have to do. It's even earlier if there are tenant improvements, because we really would need to do something like tomorrow, because in order for us to get those tenant improvements happening, and I need to have the financing all taken care of on the bank side so that your support can come into play. I can work with somebody to make those improvements and get them through permitting, which I heard it's kind of could take up to 6 months for tenant improvements. So I realize that this is a touchy point. And if it's not possible to add, language to vacate or be in escrow, is it possible to move escrow back to February 28th at that close? I don't want to use that. Believe me, I want this to be smooth, as smooth as I can make it. But it's just a worry that we're not seeing something. We did see something yesterday. And it's affordable, and it does need TI. It's smaller than what we thought we wanted, but it might be able to work. And so we may just put an offer on that and put a bunch of contingencies on it, so that we can make sure that it's a use that will be compatible for us, because we are planning to actually let go of all of our resource center services and the drop-in homeless services in this move. So we would be moving to an office situation, and it's mainly case managers that go to people's apartments that are in our domestic violence program and meet with them. And then we have one homeless grant right now that is totally outreach. So there's a mobile outreach component, and then there's a housing navigator, and they outsource in the field or go out with the outreach worker. So we're not going to have homeless people coming to this new site. That's not the plan. We don't have time to deal with that. We just have time to sort of hunker down and change our focus, and maybe someday you'll want a day center, and we'd love to do it in the right way, because what we have now is too small anyway. So that's the board's hope, is that we can get back into those services at some time in the future. But right now we need to shore up and just focus on getting ourselves settled with just that office situation. Thank you.
Just so I understand, you had mentioned possibly renting. Is that a serious consideration for you? Or?
I hope it's not, because I don't want to move twice. But I'm just saying, to preserve the incentive payment and get out by December 31st as you want, then I wouldn't have much choice. But I really don't want to do that. I'm really motivated to make a purchase, have your incentive work in that direction. It's a wonderful opportunity for us to have some control over our future, and be in a different place. That the Verizon Tower rent that Graham mentioned goes right now. The whole thing goes to our SDG&E bill, $18,000 for our SDG&E bill. We're expecting to really change that by this kind of shift, where we go into something under 4,000 feet and we just figure out how to make it work.
All right. Well, I'm going to want Graham and possibly Morgan to weigh in on this. But before we go there, council members, do any of you have questions of the Crisis House team?
Yeah, I do. Let's talk about you've talked a lot about the purchase market. What about the leasing market? You said there's a 1% vacancy. Can we assume that the leasing market is just as tight as the purchasing market?
Correct. The leasing market is just as tight. And
I have been told I can rent up to 6,000 square feet by a private party. So, but I probably wouldn't even do that, because I don't know that I can afford it. We haven't talked numbers yet. So I may just move, for instance, a bookkeeper to a one-person office and let everybody come to her to get checks to pay landlords and so forth, and then try and work as much as we can from home to get through that piece. So I don't think I can afford to actually move our whole operation to a lease, because actually a purchase, if I can purchase what I saw yesterday, then I might be able to be mortgage free, and that's my absolute goal. So that's one of the challenges that Robbie mentioned, is I don't want to spend a lot of money, because I don't have it. I never planned for it. Luckily, we've never had to pay rent, so there's no budget for it.
So, but just to piggyback what you were saying, Steve, yeah, the vacancy rates are still low. Anything over, I would say right now, office-wise, we have a 1,700-foot one here in Santee. There's not a lot of office buildings in East County in particular, and to the point of the Magnolia building, you guys are going to have no problem selling that for peak pricing right now. We haven't seen prices come down yet from all this, and part of it is just there's lack of stuff that comes up for sale. In East County, I sold a 17,000-foot building on Magnolia to a guy 3 years ago for $2.2 million, 17,000 feet on 1.53 acres, and we just sold it for 4.4 in 3 years. So the market has just been out of control because there's still a lot of people on the sidelines with money, And so you wouldn't have any issue selling that. And then shifting over to the office market, right? So if you said, hey, show me 4,000 to 5,000 feet, I could show you stuff up in the Gillespie tilt-ups, but that's definitely not a fit for Mary's operation. And then the other stuff that might be available out there, it's older product, it's upstairs, it doesn't have ADA accessibility to it. So you start to run up into challenges like that, but there's just not a lot of, office space available in East County and per capita, from, Santee, Lakeside, El Cajon, all the different areas, and even Lemon Grove. There's smaller stuff available, under 1,500 feet, but even those are, like the one here in my building, it's all upstairs, no elevator served, nothing. So you have your challenges with it if it is available.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anybody else? Before I move on, Angela, do you have any speaker cards on this item?
Yes, sir. We have 15 comment cards submitted. And the first one is from Stephanie Harper. She writes, I think it is just shameful what you are doing to the crisis house. And what is worse, in this report didn't even state why, after all these years, the city is not renewing their lease. The city knows that the crisis house depends on the revenue from the cell tower and the $1 a year rent. There are so many people who depend on their services. In fact, that is where the housing manager we were paying came from. So many services that you don't receive from ECTLC are going to be lost. I understand that this may seem to some the city is being fair, but to those of us who know how vital the crisis house is to the low-income community, we think this is a rotten move on the city's part. I believe it's pretty cowardly not to just tell the truth regarding the city's all of a sudden change of heart regarding why not to renew the lease. It is because the new hotel that just went up, they don't want the hotel guests to see our city's plight. So I'm wondering if this was a move that was pre-planned, because I really don't think this was just the city doing something nice for the hotel. If you are ashamed of our city citizens, then you truly need to evaluate the job you are doing. I believe the city should help find a new location in El Cajon, grant them funding every year, just as they do to the ECTLC, and help them out with startup money for the new location, perhaps from one of the pool funds or private project funds we have on hand. Don't put another Band-Aid on this problem. Do right and fix it. The next comment is from Bob Collins, and it says, as I look around the city of El Cajon, I am amazed at the improvements that have been made over the last several years. A new police station, redevelopment of the downtown core area, and redevelopment of the old police station site, and an upgraded Magnolia Theater, very impressive. The city is asking the crisis house to relocate as a part of its redevelopment effort. The city must ask itself how it can help and do no harm to the crisis house, so it can continue to provide essential social services to the community in the future, as it has for the last 50 years. The city must not leave the crisis house in the wake of its redevelopment project, but provide sufficient funds to purchase a comparable site. Relocation assistance to do so on a reasonable timeline. Do the right thing, City Council, for the crisis house. Treat them fairly, help them out, and don't leave them behind. Next comment is from Scott Dreher. Crisis house is needed now more than ever. The request short extension of the deadline will, in the long run, save money for the city of El Cajon and help it meet both its statutory and moral obligations. It will avoid potential liabilities and litigation, and most importantly, ensure that this rare and valuable assistance remains. Now is not the time for the city to shed these sorts of services and abilities to provide them. Next comment is from Krista Panigal. As a resident of El Cajon and member of the Homeless Task Force, I am asking that the City Council extend the offer of $700,000 until the end of the lease in July 2021. I do not see a reason why these financial constraints have been put on the crisis house. To treat an agency who has done so much good for our community like this is embarrassing and has no merit. Selling the property that Crisis House currently resides in is not going to make the homeless go away. El Cajon has the second highest homeless rate next to downtown San Diego. If you compare the services offered between the two, again, an embarrassment at the lack of resources El Cajon provides. Making Crisis House fend for themselves is making it harder to provide needed services in our community. Make absolutely no sense. Extend their time frame and do the right thing. Next comment is actually for Mr. Hill. I will read it. It says, my name is Josh Hill, and I lived in East County for over 30 years. Currently, I reside in El Cajon and work for California Bank and Trust in El Cajon off Graves Avenue as Vice President, Commercial Relationship Manager. I am an acting board member and treasurer for Crisis House. I'd like to address the incentive payment of $700,000 to our foundation for the early departure of our leased property. We are grateful for the incentive. However, the time frame in which Crisis House has been asked to close on a property is unreasonable in this environment at their price point. Properties at our budget are extremely limited and has been for quite some time for suitable property. Only about a month ago, Crisis House attempted to purchase a property, but was outbid by another who paid well over asking price. Crisis House is eager to find a suitable property and is willing to provide the city with a request to vacate early. However, additional time is necessary to find a sensible option. Therefore, should Crisis House vacate their site early, it is requested that their ability to access the $700,000 go through the end of 2021. With current market conditions, it is reasonable to assume suitable properties will be listed that meet our needs as the fallout of COVID on real estate more clearly realized in the coming months. It was communicated that it wasn't the city's intention to harm Crisis House, so remain with the spirit of that comment. Provide them with a reasonable time frame to find a suitable property through 2021. The city will get their property back early as requested, and Crisis House can do their due diligence on the right property so they can continue to operate and serve their community. Next comment is from Corinne Campbell, and it reads, it is imperative that homeless and domestic violence victims have a place to go for support in the community. Crisis House supports not just El Cajon, but all of East County and beyond. Seraptimus International has a long-term agreement to support our transitional housing program to provide women and their children fleeing domestic violence for a secure long-term facility. This outstanding organization deserves to be treated with the utmost respect in these negotiations. The service they provide to the local community is outstanding, and so many people and other organizations depend on them. It is really outrageous that so little consideration has been given to their situation by the city of El Cajon. Please consider their request for contract negotiations to extend their deadline for closing to February 28, 2021. It is in the best interest of everyone in the community and all who depend on them to live a somewhat productive life. For goodness sakes, lives are at stake here. Next comment, we're about halfway there. Jack Miklos, and it says, Honorable Mayor Wells and City Council members, my name is Jack Miklos. I'm a consultant to Crisis House and a member of East County's Homeless Task Force. I respectfully request that the Council honor the intent and spirit of the early lease termination agreement with its $700,000 incentive payment if Crisis House either is in escrow on December 31, 2020, or has vacated the property on December 31, 2020. It seems Crisis House would have met its obligation and effectively ended its lease early, and thus benefiting the city of El Cajon in expended the sale of the property. Thank you. Next comment from Ms. Kathy Smith. It says, my name is Kathy Smith, and I have been a resident in East County for over 30 years and a resident of El Cajon for 17 years. I am acting board president for Crisis House. I thank you for the time to share my concerns with the city incentive payment to Crisis House for early vacating the current building. In these uncertain times, the unforeseen COVID-19 outbreak, limited inventory of unoccupied office space for purchase, the unstable economy, to name a few, it seems very unreasonable to expect that Mary and the relocation team to find purchase move by December 31st and close escrow by January 31st. But I have seen firsthand how motivated the staff at Crisis House are to move. They have been looking at properties, sending out inquiries to the community and volunteers, asking for leads, and packing boxes to be prepared to move quickly. I am asking for you to allow Crisis House the $700,000 incentive payment if we vacate by December 31st, 2020, even without finding a building to purchase by then, not to have the funds available to us when the best property comes off the market. I believe it is unfair and unreasonable and not in the spirit of the agreement to withhold these monies, even if we can't purchase a building by the end of the year and be in escrow by January 31st. If we vacate by December 31st, we should get the incentive agreement of $700,000. That was the original condition of the leaving the property early. Please do the right thing for Crisis House and the many people we serve. Next comment is from Mr. Humbert Cabrera. Best regards to the mayor and council members during these difficult times. During COVID, the strain of our systems has been tested. The Crisis House is one of the most needed organizations. Domestic violence and homelessness have not gone away. We would like to have the council and staff consider making it possible for the Crisis House to remain at least until December 30th. This seems like a reasonable time to find a new location and get the needed tenant improvements permitted and constructed. We support extending the time period with full benefits as much as possible. During this time of most need, we find our support 100% behind the Crisis House. Because of COVID, this is when we need them most. The Crisis House has served the Valley of Opportunity for over a quarter century. Please try your hardest to make their transition beneficial and honorable as their service has been to our citizens and community. Thank you for your consideration, Humbert and Angela Cabrera. Next comment is from Ms. Mary Case, and it reads, I am Mary Case, Executive Director of Crisis House and homeowner in El Cajon for 17 years. For 50 years, Crisis House has been a great partner to the city, providing essential services to the homeless and women and men who are fleeing domestic violence. We end homelessness for over 500 people with 330 children each year. We serve a total of 4,500 people and provide over 18,000 services to them. Each year, in partnership with the community, we provide holiday gifts and meals to 137 families, 364 kids, totaling 549 people. Each year, we coordinate the annual point in time count for the homeless in El Cajon and host Project Homeless Connect East County, where over 50 organizations provide health, mental health, and addiction services to over 200 homeless people to help get connected to the resources they need to move toward ending their homelessness. We are asking the mayor and council to let the Crisis House realize the full $700,000 incentive payment to make a purchase at a future time by vacating the property on or before December 31, 2020, to make a purchase when one becomes available if we aren't able to purchase by December 31, and close escrow by January 31, 2021. If possible, we would like to extend the escrow date to February 28 to provide more time to find a property. To safely close escrow by January 31, 2021, we would need to purchase by November 1, considering the holidays and unforeseen issues that could arise in escrow. If tenant improvements are needed, which all of the properties on the market now require for us to change to an office only use and eliminate the resource center drop-in services for the homeless, need to make this happen tomorrow. Thank you for your consideration and the opportunity for a dialogue today. And we have, five more comments, sir. The next one is from Katrina Wilborn. Good afternoon. My name is Katrina Wilborn, and I am a board member for Crisis House and member of the relocation team. During these past few months, I can assure you that the relocation team has been actively working towards finding a suitable location for Crisis House while keeping budget, location, and potential improvements to the property in mind. With the COVID-19 pandemic and low property inventory, finding a location has proven to be next to impossible during these trying times. In order to keep providing services that the community so desperately needs, I am asking for the City Council to allow for Crisis House for more time to find its next home, to make the full $700,000 available to Crisis House as long as we vacate the Magnolia building by December 31st, and not tie it to the purchase of a building immediately would be immensely helpful. This would allow for more time for the relocation team to find a building that is suitable for Crisis House. fits within our budget and allows for the city to have the building/space to use for your discretion. The relocation team has been vigilant about inquiring about off-market properties, visiting properties, and contacting brokers about potential locations. Any additional time to locate the ideal property for Crisis House would be greatly appreciated. Please honor the agreement and allow Crisis House to have the $700,000 if the property is vacated by December 31st, and allow for the funds to be used for a building purchase in the next year. Thank you for your time and consideration. Next comment is from Judy Horning. I have been a member of the Crisis House Board of Directors for 9 years. I also represent Seroptimus International of Poway and North San Diego. Our two clubs have been providing fully furnished apartments to families referred through Crisis House, transitional housing programs for victims of domestic violence for 22 years. These women and children are case managed by Crisis House. We provide the apartments and mentors to help the women become safe, productive, and independent. This program is essentially beneficial to these families because they take everything with them when they graduate to start their new independent lives on their own. Crisis House has been a jewel of East San Diego County for 50 years. It would be criminal to force its demise during a pandemic and poor realty opportunities. Our members are urging the El Cajon City Council to allow the extra time to locate and appropriate new location while retaining the $700,000 early lease incentive. Thank you for your consideration. The next comment is from Barbara Nunes. Good afternoon. My name is Barbara Nunes. I am an active board member and former program participant for Crisis House. Thank you for the opportunity to voice my request today. Time is running thin for our organization. We have been working diligently to find a new property in the current market. I am requesting that you please consider our original agreement of granting Crisis House the $700,000 upon moving out by December 31st, 2020. This would give us the proper time to still purchase a new facility. The community is counting on us. And I have two more comments, sir. The next one is from Anna Marie Picconi Snyder. As a consulting project director of the East County Homeless Task Force, I offer gratitude to the City Council and staff of the City of El Cajon for continuing to dialogue and negotiate with Crisis House as they plan to successfully navigate the move of their invaluable services for all our vulnerable community members from one location to another. The best scenario for Crisis House is the best scenario for their clients. As community, we must all work together to assist with this transition and ensure the long-term success of their more than 50-year mission, according to our means, so that there is little interruption to services as possible. We support the collaboration of the City of El Cajon with Crisis House to create the best outcome for our community members who depend upon their services. Thank you for this extra effort. And the last comment is from Carol Lewis. I would like to voice my support for Crisis House. This organization has been serving East County for several years, often providing the only services for our unsheltered neighbors. This includes postal services, emergency meals, housing support, and shelter for those experiencing domestic violence. The City of El Cajon has relied upon them to provide these services in our community. I would like to ask the council members to please delay the mandatory restrictions placed upon them to locate and purchase a building. We all know that during our present circumstances with COVID-19, there are a shortage of vacant buildings and properties available for purchase. That drives the price up and prime properties may be out of reach. As more businesses are struggling to make payments due to mandatory closures, inventory will increase and prices should drop. Crisis House should be allowed the time necessary to examine the market, look for buildings that meet their needs, and purchase something that will allow them to conduct services for another 50 years. And that is the last comment, sir.
Thank you very much. All right, Morgan, or no, Graham.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to need some direction on this. I mean, I understood the concept of providing $700,000. I thought it was extremely generous, but there was a give and take there, right? I mean, we get something out of that, and that is we get control of the building in 2020.
Yeah.
But now we're talking that if they were to purchase, it would take us possibly up to basically the time that the lease was ending anyway. And am I understanding that correctly?
That's what they were asserting.
Okay. And then, so to me, it sounds like the thing that makes sense is if they want to continue to get the $700,000, we get what we're looking for is to encourage them to lease and to be out of the building by the end of the year. Are you in agreement with that statement?
The challenge is that if they were to relocate under a lease scenario, we wouldn't be able to eligibly use the $700,000 to help with that component. What they're asking for, I think, I'll try to articulate it a little differently. If they were to
why?
What's up?
Yeah, you have to explain it to me why that the leasing purchasing makes the $700,000 ineligible.
Certainly. So community development block grant monies come in two different categories. Programmatic money, and we use a lot of programmatic money to help organizations like Home Start, Crisis House has been used. We've used programmatic money for them. We use programmatic money for ECTLC, for example. That's one pot of money. And then there's capital money that's used to buy stuff, to build things, to build a building or to build a playground. We purchase that money with community development block grant capital funds. So that pot of money, that money is colored with that capital taint. So we can't use that money for programmatic money. So a lease, for example, we can use program money for helping someone pay rent, but we can't use capital money to help for program activities.
Okay.
And that's a HUD requirement, federal government requirement. We have no control over that. I don't know, Mr. Morgan or Mr. Foley, you're going to probably say something similar.
Yeah, I was going to just add that the gist of the comments that I heard was moving out or allowing them to vacate by the end of this calendar year, and then holding the $700,000, but allowing them more time to acquire property rather than letting it expire by a date certain. So I think rather than what we have proposed, which is to have an escrow and moved out and have an escrow that closes, they don't have to move out until February 1st based on the proposal. They're asking, can we move out? You hold on to the $700,000, and then we have until the end of next year to actually close escrow. And if we don't, the money goes away. The city can use it for other purposes.
And that would be acceptable?
It's up to the city council. As long as it's used for capital purposes, as Mr. Mitchell, now you got me doing it, Graham. Mr. Mitchell mentioned, you could hold on to it. I assume it's just a matter of whether we're wanting to do that and bank that money and dedicate it for their use in the future up through whatever date you determine is appropriate.
Gary.
Well, it seems to me that our goal is to get them to move out earlier than what the lease requires. So if they were to move out by December 31st and we put the money into an escrow account, we still get a benefit. So it's not a gift of public funds by getting them to move out 6 or 7 months earlier. And then now Morgan has just told us that the escrow can be delayed, and that would meet the conditions of the HUD requirements. So why do we care whether or not they purchased something in January or next, the September after that?
So how long could that escrow? How long could that money sit in the escrow account and still be CDBG money?
Well, it wouldn't have to be an escrow account. It could just be a designated fund within that the city controls. Right. I think my concern is this in perpetuity. are we going to be here a year from now? I think the council, if this is the direction you want to go, I think you need to have a hard deadline. Otherwise, we'll be revisiting this every year. So, and from what I heard, maybe next year isn't sufficient enough of time to find and purchase a property. So I think you could be right back where you're at today, a year from now.
More thoughts from the council?
Yeah, I've got a question for the brokers. Is Robbie still around?
We can bring it back up.
Might be good to have Robbie, Mary, and I think it was Josh. Okay, there's Robbie. Okay, Robbie, I got a question for you.
Yeah, 1 second.
We hear quite a bit that they're looking for a property that meets their needs.
Right.
And currently, they're talking 4,000 square feet. $700,000 for a 4,000 square foot building. That's a pretty good bargain, isn't it?
If you can find it. I mean, you're not going to buy a 4,000 foot building for $700,000. They're going to spend more.
Exactly. So my point is, let's like take a step back and say, are we even chasing a realistic dream, or will Crisis House could seek additional funds elsewhere? It could reduce its square footage. So
we're looking at everything between 2,500 feet up to 6,000 feet. Just to kind of spread the widest net. We did identify a small building yesterday. It's listed at $689,000. It's going to take a little bit of work. It's one thing that Mary was talking about, and it's got a tenant in half the space. It's in default, so it's not going to be easy. But that's what she was saying. If we end up making an offer on it, it's going to be contingent upon getting that tenant out of there and making sure that their office use, which that's what it's going to be, it'll be sufficient in that property. So I think after talking with Josh, we've looked at, like, if they get the $700,000 from the city, then we can potentially go up to $1 million, borrow the difference, and then, kind of figure out if we can get something from that angle. From my relationships of being out here for so long, I'm going to owners directly saying, here's what I have. You have a building that, maybe the tenant wants out, or they're on the fence, and, maybe they work something out directly with them, them to get them into the building sooner than later. I mean, our goal from day one, from when I met Mary, was find a building, get out of the property. So, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't, their goal is to get out. They don't want to stay as long as possible. They want to move to the next location because there's just so much unknown. They got a lease that ends anyways.
So Robbie,
here's the question.
I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
Go ahead, Bill.
Just a quick question, Robbie. Are you talking then about looking for a situation where the owner of the building that you're purchasing could carry some of the paper?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, we're looking at all angles.
Okay.
There's properties that are sitting out there that aren't even, that aren't on the market, and maybe the tenants aren't paying their rent right now. Sure. And so it's a matter of, those specific owners saying, hey, what are you going to do with this? You want to sell it? And here's who you could sell it to, or, we're trying to exhaust every possible angle right now.
Do you feel like you could obtain a loan for $300,000 if you needed to bring it up to $1 million?
Mary? I mean, Josh, that's what we talked about, right?
Yeah, I think getting a loan for an additional $300,000 for a total purchase price of $1 million is very doable.
Steve, and then Gary.
The $700,000 thing, we essentially are custodians of the public's money. And so we're not trying to be tight, or we're trying to say, if the public held us accountable for our use of $700,000 of the public's money, they would say, hey, are you using our money in a wise way? And that's kind of what we're looking at here. What's the best use of the public's money? This isn't really our money or our decision. We're trying to get, the best win for everybody. I heard some public comments that were quite frequent about, we're going to lose all these services. And we still have hundreds of thousands of dollars of support services in El Cajon with organizations. Crisis House undoubtedly is an important partner. We funded the Housing Navigator 3 years ago, and they were so good at it, they parlayed that into a $300,000 HEAP grant. So Crisis House does add value, as well as these other organizations. I guess I'm kind of thinking about, if the public said, did you use our $700,000 the best way? That's kind of where I'm mulling over right now.
Yeah. Gary Kenner?
Steve, to address your concerns, I think that Crisis House does add value no matter where they land in East County. They add value to El Cajon. So I don't have a problem with the $700,000. We get a benefit from it because it helps keep them in business, and we get a benefit from it because it vacates the building sooner rather than later. So I see there's benefit there. My question to Robbie is, what's a reasonable amount of time for them to close escrow? How far forward would we need to go to make it reasonable that they'll be able to find something? So this doesn't go on for 5 years.
Right. It's a good question. So, our intent is to find something right away. I think when, like Josh and I, when I first started meeting with Mary, it's just the start to finish time frame. Once you find something, right? So, 90 days to get your financing in place. In the event we need some financing, right? And then 30 days to close after that. So it's 180 days total time frame. If we can shorten that stuff up, that's our full intent to do that. If we can go least path of resistance, that's what we're going to do. I think from the real estate standpoint, what the problem we have, somebody comes with cash, we're out. And then you got to get an owner to work with us. Like, hey, we need time. We need to be able to. One of the things that came up in our conversation was, for Mary was, okay, once we identify a property, how are you going to put a down payment on it? And that was like in my head, you can't really go into escrow on a building without a down payment, right? You need, 30 to 50 grand in some cases. So where's that money going to come from? So we're figuring out how we can get everything streamlined to where we can be competitive in the market with the other buyers in the market. And that's where it gets to be a challenge. But to answer your question, 180 days max. I would think that would be sufficient because that would give us 90 days for financing and then maybe a little extra time if we need it, and then try to close it as fast as possible from there.
So if we had that $700,000 set aside and you had to close, let's say by August 1st of 2021,
mm-hmm.
and the city, and then you put in a contingency on that down payment that if it doesn't close escrow, you get your money back.
Of course,
so the city can get their money back because that could be city money.
Absolutely.
And then do you think you could swing that deal? A good chance of it? I know there's nothing.
The issue we have right now is I'm pretty confident there's going to be more stuff coming up. It's just because in a weird way, it's a bad time for them to move, but with what's happened with COVID, it's going to free up more properties. It's just going to happen. So it's just, we haven't seen that effect yet. And the real estate market's been so extremely tight for the past 5 years, that everything gets sold. It's off market anyways. And so now that we've started to channel all the avenues of getting in front of everyone, something's going to come up, but that amount of time would be great. And it's. Go ahead.
What I'm thinking is that several things in this proposal. One is that the Crisis House vacates by December 31st. We had this $700,000 set aside. They have to close escrow by August 1st of 2021, and we will give them the money for the down payment, which in the contingency in the escrow they can get back. So if something goes haywire, the city gets their money back.
Yep.
And that way we achieve several things. One is there's a benefit to the city. If Crisis House leaves by December 31st, we can do what we need to do on that piece of property. And Crisis House, I'm convinced, is a benefit to our community. Again, no matter where they land in East County, and it would be going that money. It would be legal because it would follow the HUD guidelines because it's being used for a building, which is a capital expenditure. So it seems to me that kind of solves most of the problems. But I'd be interested to see what my fellow council members.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good compromise.
I have a quick question. Given Gary's proposal, this is probably for Graham and maybe Morgan. I want to loop back to Steve's original concern is in the event the sale of the property doesn't yield that full $700,000, and then we'd be on the hook out of the general fund to compensate the difference. Is there something that we could draft to ensure that we're not pulling money out of our general fund? Does that make sense? My question, concern.
Yeah. I mean, we initially, as I was thinking about how to draft the initial agreement, I thought about is there a contingency? What in the event that? But remember, we will be depositing money into an escrow account prior to us selling the property. So we'll be using general fund monies initially, and then we'll be reimbursing it with the proceeds of the sale. So
got it.
From a timing perspective, I don't think that works. And second, it's hard for them to make an offer on a property which is contingent on our contingent. So we thought the $700,000 threshold is a safe one based on the appraisal we received and also counsel from our broker.
Okay, that quells some concerns that taxpayers aren't going to be on the hook to pony up the dough for a potential deal. Thank you, Graham.
So at worst, then the general fund would loan the money to them, be reimbursed by the sale of the current Crisis House property.
That's correct.
But if there's any shortage, could that shortage come from CDBG funds?
You could probably use it from some program CDBG funds, but as you recall, every year you max those out. So you would have to take those from one of the entities you currently fund.
What's the appraisal on the building right now? I know it's probably going to be scraped, but
1.2, and that 1.2 million right now. Okay, and what's the land improvement ratio? Did they? I don't know that. Really, the value is in the land. A lot of the value. Values in the land, in part the cell tower. Oh yeah, that's right, because that's an ongoing income.
And I don't know anything about the lease you have with that cell tower, but most cell towers, if you're not, they own the rights to the roof space. So would you even be able to tear the building down without buying that lease out? Or they have control of the building to a point once they put a cell tower on it. There's another one, 618 Main Street, same scenario. You almost can't do anything with the building until you get the cell tower to approve it. So, but yeah, that is a definite benefit to that building.
It seems to me we have enough cushion between the appraised value and the money, the $700,000. Correct. And just for council's benefit, the cell tower is actually not affixed to the building. It's a standalone.
Oh, okay. And
it has its own shed. And we're actually, their agreement expires about the same time as Crisis House's agreement. We're currently in negotiation with them. So depending on how well we do during the negotiations, our land value could even go up more.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you present value that income stream of what it's possibly going to be from the cell tower, that could add value. It's going to probably add some value there.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty academic concern. It seems to me like we're not taking a significant amount of risk by having $700,000 attached to that. I think we'll get our money back. So the question really is, do you as a council want to set that money aside and set a date to that to give this time to work out? Because I don't see it working out the way that we've got it structured right now. I don't see it happening. I think it's unrealistic, and I'm glad we had a frank conversation about that. I like Gary's idea, and I think I can support that.
So here's a question for Mary, if she's still on the line. I'll wait and see if she's available.
I am, Steve.
So if we set a date of July 31st or August 1st, and that is our best and final offer, and if things don't close by that date, that you're okay with that. We're not going to get we just need 2 more months. We just need 2 more months. Are you okay with the best and final of July 31st or August 1st?
Yes. I'm fine with that. I wish I didn't have to move out of the building to do that, but or have a little more time, but I get it. I can work with that.
So
and believe
in a normal, go ahead, Mary.
I want to get this done sooner. I'm going to have a heart attack pretty soon if I can't buy a building and get this going.
So in normal commercial environments, I would think, if you have a tenant whose lease is ending July 31st, what's the value of offering money at the point that they're going to move out? You wouldn't have to pay that money anyway because they'd be out by July 31st. But this is not that normal commercial situation. This is a social service agency which adds a lot of value to East County. And in that sense, we probably would still give them $700,000 on the date they're supposed to be out anyway, because of the value of what they do, and because this council has for years supported the work of Crisis House and supported homeless services. So for that reason, I would agree with Mr. Kendrick and Mr. Wells.
Well, I'd support the motion as well.
Gary,
motion. I'll make one suggestion. August 1st is a Sunday, so just move it to August 2nd.
Okay.
Oh, that's why you went to a good law school.
Yeah, I can count on my fingers.
Berkeley comes through again.
That's right.
Okay, then, Morgan, is it appropriate for me to make a motion now? Okay, then I'll make the motion that they have to be out by December 31st and that we set aside the $700,000 and we can give them money for the down payment with contingencies that says we can get the money back if the escrow doesn't close. And escrow must close by August 2nd.
Of what year?
Of 2021. Does that cover all our bases, Morgan?
Yeah, we'll need to obviously modify the agreement somewhat more than just the dates to deal with the deposit issue. Is it your intent that the deposit would be part of the same CDBG funds eventually? Or
Yes.
is it separate money?
Yeah, no, it's part of the CBDG funds, but we may have to use, general fund money, and then the CBDG money pays them back.
Yeah, I think for the council, we can work out some language that gives us some flexibility. I mean, we do have some capital CDBG money that we have allocated for Wells Park. So if we haven't spent that money, we could use those funds. What I'd recommend is we'll just be liable to deposit money into their escrow account when they open up escrow. So we won't take $700,000 and park it someplace. We'll just be liable for that. And so once they open up escrow, we'll deposit the $700,000 whichever way we can get it. We may actually have sold the property by then, and give us some flexibility that way if the council
I think
is okay.
that's great.
I'll second the motion.
To include what Graham said.
I'll second
Mayor,
the motion.
Thank you. Mayor Wells, your vote.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ortiz.
Yes.
Councilmember Goebel.
Yes.
Councilmember Kendrick.
Yes.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
Nicely done. Good job, Gary. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. The last administrative report, item 6, is for the designation of a voting delegate and alternate for the League of Cities or League of California Cities. And staff, will you tell us about this, please?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, and members of the council. Each year, the city sends representatives to the annual League of California Cities Conference. It was scheduled to be in Long Beach this year, but because of the pandemic, it has been canceled and it'll be done virtually. So there'll be actually a nominal cost to us to participate. So we would recommend that we designate, as usual, the mayor to represent the city at the voting portion of that annual conference. And if he's unavailable, we'd recommend that you would appoint me as the alternate voting delegate for the conference. So with that, we just need council approval for those 2 appointments.
Any objection?
I'll move that we accept that recommendation.
Second.
Mayor Wells, your vote.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ortiz.
Yes.
Councilmember Goebel.
Yes.
Councilmember Kendrick.
Yes.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
Thank you. We are now at activities reports. Councilmember Kendrick.
As reported.
Councilmember Goebel.
As reported.
Deputy Mayor Phil Ortiz.
As reported.
And mine are as reported as well. There are no joint councilmember reports. Item 13 is a report on donations to the animal shelter in the month of June. And it looks like Terry Casey donated $100. And Irene Marie Young donated $256. Thank you very much for those donations. That's very kind. We have no first or second reading of ordinances on today's agenda. We have no closed session on today's agenda, and this brings us to adjournment. The adjourned regular joint meeting of the El Cajon City Council and El Cajon Housing Authority held this 28th day of July 2020 is adjourned until Tuesday, August 11th, 2020 at 3 o'clock p.m. Thanks very much from all of you. We'll see you guys in August.